Hello and welcome to the very first installment of The View from the Piano Bench. Or maybe I should say, my view from the piano bench. I'll think about that. This is brand new, so things will adjust as we go along, but it actually isn't brand new at all. If you have been following me on my Facebook page or on my other YouTube channel, you'll know that up until now, this stream was called Inside the Process. So I take you inside my world, some of my experiences, or insights if I have them, or ideas or thoughts, hopefully not conclusions or opinions held too tightly. But hopefully it's engaging and interesting, and this is a compliment to the other stream that happens on this YouTube channel, which is Piano for My Friends. So inside the process, when I stopped live streaming on Facebook back in, I think, October of last year, I was uploading this to another YouTube channel. I create a new YouTube channel every year because I'm ridiculous. And that channel last year was Joe Holt's Notes 2021. I haven't created this year's channel yet. I know it's 2022. But I'm moving that over to here and hoping to see some of you who follow me on YouTube or have throughout the years with the other videos I put here and who have latched on a little bit or have noticed or have watched Piano for My Friends, which I appreciate. So I'm kind of moving it over into the more primetime space, kind of. And the view from the piano bench is my perspective, not just on the piano, but upon life that I get from here. I will often say that if I ever do succeed in writing a book, and I've threatened to write several, at this point in my life, I'll be doing well to get one, and that one will be called Everything I Ever Needed to Know in Life I Learned at the Piano, or from the piano, one or the other. And that's certainly true. So welcome. We're going to do this every Wednesday night, a new upload premiere at 7 p.m. And you'll notice the link in the description to the support page of my website. Thank you to those of you who encouraged me along the way with that. And that does help me sustain this and create the time to do these live streams, which I'd like to, well, I keep calling them live streams, they're not, they're videos. But I want to keep them going, in part because everything is still kind of precarious. I don't know if we're ever going to really in this country lock down again. I certainly hope not. But I'd like to leave this in place. But also this continues to serve a purpose, even if it's in a small niche of people. I don't need a lot of people. I just want to have rapport with who's there. So I'd like to keep this going, and I certainly intend to. So every week there is a topic, and this topic I've titled One Man Rhythm Section. And this is inspired by a review that Sharon Sable and I recently acquired from jazz journalist Scott Yano. Sharon Sable and I are, and have been for the past year and a half, working on a Blossom Dearie tribute project. Maybe not year and a half. Well, for a while. I forget when we started, but we started during the pandemic, and then performance, I guess it has been, but that's not relevant. There I go into, all these little explorations into my mind will be other topics. Be afraid. And that review can be read two places: on my blog or journal. If you go to my website, which of course that support link will take you to, and you can look around otherwise, and go to journal, and I made a post with his review. Also on the Sharon Sable and Joe Holt Blossom Dearie Tribute Project Facebook page. And I pulled that page up on my phone and turned off airplane mode, which I had turned on for doing the stream, forgetting that I wanted to get this up and read this. So I'm not going to read the whole review. I invite you to do it. It's a wonderful review. We're thrilled about it, and things are starting to happen with that particular project. You know, as we all, Sharon, myself, and every other working musician, manage multiple projects along the way. But I want to read you what Scott Yano said, just one sentence about me, right? After he said, Sharon Sable is joined by pianist Joe Holt. And what he reviewed actually was a concert from a video. It was a live stream that we did at the Mainstay back in April of last year. And it's one I can't share with you because it was a paid live stream, but I was able to share it with Scott. And here's what he said. And he knows me, and therefore he said this. Due to his background in playing swing and stride piano, Joe Holt is able to function as a very musical one-man rhythm section in this intimate setting, accompanying and inspiring the singer. First of all, thank you, Scott. I'm going to read it again because there's a lot in here. And this is kind of what I'm basing this video on today. Due to his background in playing swing and stride piano, Joe Holt is able to function as a very musical one-man rhythm section in this intimate setting, meaning it was just a duo between Sharon and myself, accompanying and inspiring the singer. So one-man rhythm section, there's a lot to talk about with the idea of rhythm section and one person, And the thing that really impressed me is the connection that Scott made to stride piano and being a one-man rhythm section, or being able to play solo and fill up the space, but not just in the style of stride piano. That was the implication. And a lot of people don't pick that up, and Scott was right on it. Meaning that once you're used to filling up the space that would be occupied by other musicians playing with you in a rhythm section, then you can adjust the approach to play different styles. You're not locked in to one style. We're going to talk about the style of stride piano specifically in a minute, but I want to break down the components of that rhythm section that the one-man part is covering. And say first that the melody of a composition is the composition. Now, we're leaving lyrics out of this for the sake of arranging things instrumentally, because a rhythm section, there's no one in the rhythm section that sings. We all, as musicians playing tunes, want to be aware of lyrics and their meaning and represent them, but that's not the point here. The point is that instrumentally the tune is happening. Right? We're going to allow the singer to deliver the words, and the piano, bass, drums, and guitar, which would be a full rhythm section, are going to be the ones covering that. But in all of that, the melody itself, and I'm going to play the melody of a tune that you might recognize. That was close enough to the melody of Someday My Prince Will Come from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And that has become kind of a jazz standard for musicians playing. But everything that happens in that composition is connected to the melody and comes from the melody. Now, you recognize that song as Someday My Prince Will Come. You don't need extra things going on, a drummer or anything. And speaking of drummers, if I got my if I have my time nailed down, you can feel the pulse of the music, even though I'm not providing any of the rhythmic cues other than just playing the melody. Everything is there. The harmony is there, and the harmony is like extracted, well, implied, and then extracted and perhaps expanded upon. So let's start to draw things out of the melody. Before I do that, it's a good thing I make notes because I forget everything. The melody being the composition is illustrated by when we're dealing with royalties and copyright. Where they land is the melody. So if I play a recognizable tune here that's copyrighted, then the YouTube algorithm, bot, whatever it is going to pick that up, and it's listening for the melody. And once it picks that up, it assigns the ad revenue to the owner of that melody. That's the copyright. Or if I were to release, or not have, and well, again, so let's not say were to, when I release a CD, or when Sharon and I get this Blossom Dearie CD out, which is going to be in a few months at most, you have to pay a mechanical licensing fee. You have to provide royalties. And the standard that a tune is judged by is actually not the lyrics, it's not the chords, it's the melody, period. Right? And that's why you can go online and you can, if you want like a karaoke words of tunes, everybody does this. You go to some lyric site, and you read the lyrics on your phone, and you're not being charged for that. It's actually kind of interesting to me. But the melody is defining the tune. And so you're not going to go online and get the written melody. You can go online and get the chords. You can for free go online and get the, I say for free, but then you go on these free websites and they're collecting your information and all of that. Nothing's ultimately free, but you know what I mean. So you go online and you can get the chords and you can get the lyrics. So let's say you're a singing guitar player, which a lot of this is. You can play your guitar, you can sing, and you have the melody in your head. You don't need it written down. They're not collecting money for that. But it's like, people who are, especially do money, are going to collect it every chance they get. They're not going to leave it on the table, right? So that's the melody. That's how important the melody is. So it's cool that it's recognized that way in the structure of things, right? So here's that melody again. So I'm going to just play another single line of notes, and I'm going to play it on the slightly lower side. And you might imagine it's a bass guitar or a cello or a saxophone or a tuba or a trombone. And that melody, that second melody I played becomes accompaniment, because the tune that you're still hearing in your head was not whatever tune or melody the left hand was making. I was playing single notes, so you could have just played it by itself. I could have. But you were still hearing that main melody of Someday My Prince Will Come, and maybe the words are helping you do that if you were saying the words to yourself or singing them. So what I played was underneath, not just because the notes were lower, but it was in support. of that. So that was accompaniment, right? And the rhythm section is accompaniment. And I should have made that distinction. The rhythm section accompanies what's going on. And of course, Scott did say that, didn't he? And he actually said something pretty wonderful. He said accompanying and inspiring the singer. That's a whole nother thing. And that's about the interaction of musicians on stage. I'm going to talk about that another week. So now we have let's just say that's our bass player, right? You can picture, the upright or electric player, or it could be a tuba, right? Although tuba kind of lends itself stylistically to something older, but this is an older style. It could work, right? So now let's leave that aside, and let's think about a guitar player, right? Strum, 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 right? And I'm going to play the chords here similar to how a guitar would play them in a similar range. I can't really strum. I mean, you can, but it's a, I don't know what the word is. It portrays a strum more than it actually is like a guitar strum, So anyway. So here's your guitar or your chords. And then the tricky part for the pianist is to do all that at once. And when I say this, I don't say this to elevate myself. It just happens to be the case that my comfort zone is playing it all myself. And it's not typical, particularly these days. It was much more typical 50 years ago or 70 years ago for a pianist to play by themselves and not feel, or have the listener not feel, that you want to hear other musicians with them, which is the case in contemporary jazz. And pianists do play solo, but they don't really necessarily create the whole rhythm section themselves. And and sometimes you'll see comments on videos. It's like, this is great, but I wish there was a bass player and drummer or guitar player or something like that. And then let's go back to what Scott said. He said, due to his background in playing swing and stride piano, the swing part is less relevant. I understand what he's doing, but actually you could leave the word swing out because it's not directly relevant the way stride piano is. Due to his background in playing stride piano, Joe Holt is able to function as a one-man rhythm section, which stride piano is a self-accompanying, just striding back and forth. This is, a pretty basic example of it. And we're calling it stride. It's, it's just not like a little walk in the field here in the park or while strolling through the park one day. I never thought about that. Let's try that. I'm going to keep going. I just got an idea. This is cool. I just thought and I mean, sitting at the piano is a continual process of, oh, this is cool. I just thought of that. And look what do you do with it? So I need to play that too. I mean, that's an old, I wrote a, no, did I write the arrangement? No, no. I was in high school and sang, unfortunately it was lead tenor, and I'm not really a tenor, a barbershop quartet arrangement of that. I think that tune was from 1880, right? And while strolling through the park one day in the merry, merry month of May, I was taken by surprise by a pair of roguish eyes. In a moment my poor heart she stole away, or something like that. I should retitle that, while striding through the park one day, and I should do. Okay, expect me to do that on my piano for my friends, I think. In fact, I have to write that down. I like that idea. Okay, so welcome to my process. Welcome to the view from the piano bench. Because when you get a good idea or something comes to you, a creative thing, you need to record it or it goes away. I watched a very interesting video last night that a friend shared with me while striding through the park one day. I remember it now. If I can read my writing, which I might not be able to, about how that, creative energy finds you. And one description of what one person was like a train rushing through, and as it's rushing through you, you have to grab it or it's gone. My friend Beth McDonald, describes her songwriting process as it's handed to her, pretty much complete, and she catches it. Or my friend Barbara Parker, who's a songwriter. She's like over here for a rehearsal, coming over here, and she's ran in the door. And it's like, I need a pencil, quick. I need a paper, quick. Because it had come to her right then, as she was walking in the door. So there she wrote it down. So when we get those, creative inspirations, we capture them. And in fact, my tablet's here because I have I was doing something this morning in the warming up part of my practice, which is free playing. And it was cool, and I knew I wasn't going to remember it. So since this was available, I kept playing it and tried just to make sure it stayed with me until I could get my little recording, app thing, and I was able to record it. If I had let that go away, if I had given like 30 seconds, it would have been gone. And that's a whole nother subject. You gotta be cool with it being gone. You can't catch everything. But when you can catch things, like photography or whatever, then you get to keep them in a different way or do more with them. So let's see if I made myself lose my place by talking about all these things at once. No, because I was detouring about striding through the park one day. I like that idea. Welcome to my brain. Oh my goodness. So did I play? I don't think I did. Okay, so the last thing about Someday My Prince Will Come, the way I pronounce it reminds me of how my friend Dick Durham writes that tune, because especially like old school musicians have these like alternate titles for tunes. Rather than Someday My Prince Will Come, Someday My Prince, Prints, like you go get your Kodak film developed in the 1980s and you have to wait 2 weeks for it. Someday My Prince Will Come. That's what that is. Maybe not the best representation, but I think it was good enough. And I decided against improvising on that tune right now because I've been talking a lot, and I want to get at least a little further down my notes in the hour-ish time that I have. But you can hear what happened there. That the bass, the chords played to some extent between my two hands, and the melody were all represented, as was the rhythm. So hopefully you could, tap your foot to it. So the ranges of those instruments, the functions of them were essentially covered. And you could call that being a one-man rhythm section. So now that that's all on the table, after I take a little drink of apple juice here, then I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate that in the style of stride piano, which is my background, which is where I came into jazz when I was a teenager and discovered the recordings of Fats Waller and Teddy Wilson, who wasn't exactly a stride pianist, but was coming out of that place. And that's how I came in. And that's how I developed my conception of playing. So, a little stride sounds like ragtime, but it's kind of cooler. little ain't misbehaving with all sorts of misbehaving. Well, no, just, shenanigans or fun stuff going on there. Excuse me. So that illustrates the cleanest example of self-accompanying piano jazz. And I've heard it said that stride piano is the only real form of true self-accompanying jazz. That can be argued. And actually it can be argued against by kind of what I'm saying in the stream about adapting it to other styles. But without question, it is the template where we recognize that we have a bass line. Like if I did it with two hands. Now I was doing other stuff. I was doing the walking pens. There's other stylistic components and all kind of things that go on that can be analyzed if you think about them, which I always try not to because it gets in the way. But at its core is this. So here the bass player or the tuba, maybe the banjo or the guitar strumming. Playing the wrong changes, but who cares? And the tuba player got to walk up and play a little melodic figure at the end. So that means if I'm covering those bases, I don't need those musicians with me. And I do play with rhythm sections and with wonderful players, but if I never did, and that actually sounds scary to say because I wouldn't wish that, but if I never did, I could still play the music. In fact, I'm really most comfortable doing it that way. So it was cool that Scott reviewed a live stream concert, just a duo. Sharon and I do perform with other musicians. And on the CD that's coming out, we're going to have a wonderful bass player on some, perhaps most, not sure yet, of the tracks. Amy Shook. And that's great. And those tracks are great. And it's great to have Amy is kind of what I'm saying. But I can also feel listening, in fact, last night, just listening to one of the tracks that we added, because Amy's already done her recording. So we decided, let's try this other tune, just duo. And ooh, it was so much fun, because I'm just so comfortable doing it and connecting with Sharon that way. And the thing that Scott recognized again is that stride piano is a template that when I play other styles that aren't oompa styles specifically, that comes from the place that I put myself and lived for so long as a stride player. And the big epiphany that I got in order to do that was when I was maybe 18, 19 years old, not sure, would have been late 70s probably. And I saw a pianist that I hadn't heard of. Part of the reason why, when I was that young, I was listening to people who were mostly, gone. And this guy was far from gone. Dave Mckenna. I think he passed away in 2008. So this was in the late 70s. And Dave Mckenna wouldn't call himself a stride player, but what he would acknowledge is that he accompanied himself, and what others would say about him pretty much universally is he was the epitome of self-accompanying piano post-stride era. And he did some of the stride stuff, but he mostly did swinging stuff. And I remember him. If I was going to try that, I should have been focused on actually playing. I just sort of, gargled on that. But the point is, he didn't do that. He's accompanying himself with a walking bass line. And that made so much sense to me because it was just an adaptation of what I was doing already. But I've never, and I remember even when I was younger, like playing with the idea, but not doing it like seriously, like it was a real thing, because well, it wasn't a real thing. You need a bass player to do that. And Dave Mckenna like showed me, no, if you do the thing that the bass player is doing, then you become the bass player, and you don't need the bass player in that circumstance. And that just set me on a path for the next 20 years of just like gradually kind of figuring out how to do it. But as far as like self-accompanying piano, he was the king of the hill, is and will always be the king of the hill. So so then you combine those, you know, styles, or you expand on them, and you can get maybe something like this. We'll see what happens. Nice work if you can get it. Now, that was not an imitation of Dave Mckenna. I couldn't imitate him if I wanted to, and I don't. And nobody can really imitate Dave Mckenna. He will always stand alone in what he did. But I'm certainly inspired by Dave Mckenna, and that was Dave McKenna-esque. I think it's fair to say something in that ballpark. And while I'm playing that, I'm going back to, my little connection went away, and I have to find that review again. And let's find it real quick. Here it is. So something that Scott says about Sharon, which is really, really cool, that Sharon Sable is the perfect singer that played tribute to Blossom Dearie. And then later on he says, because she hints at Blossom Dearie without trying to copy her, adding to her legacy rather than just recreating her voice. So adding to her Blossom Dearie's legacy rather than just trying to recreate her voice. In my most grand kind of thoughts about myself, I like to think that I might be able to do that to some extent with Dave Mckenna. Not recreate Dave Mckenna, but keep his legacy alive. I kind of have that as a purpose a little bit. One of the things that's in front of me. So anyway, let's go on. Now, what I did there is not exactly what you'd call a one-man band, which is kind of a caricature kind of thought. But, you got somebody sitting with their playing a bass drum and, playing guitar and having horns in front of them. It's taking the essence of all of those parts that accompany, and of course, in that case, also played the melody. I wasn't just accompanying, somebody else. I was accompanying myself, so it was all there. I wouldn't call it a one-man band, but I would call it self-accompanying jazz. So with Dave Mckenna, there are two things, well, actually there were more than two, but two things that I tried to represent there, to some extent, was this. I said before, pianos don't strum, but you can kind of suggest a strum by doing that thing. And you're using the walking tense, the open-handed thing where you can grab a bass note with your little finger, grab chord, something like that, and of course I realized I'm playing a different progression. I'm playing music. Bassline. Sometimes you just gotta succumb to the temptation to have a little fun. So the walking bass and strumming things; those are two big parts of the Mckenna bag. So I will try to represent that with one more tune. Don't run away with the tempo. Try to pull back. figure I'd get out before I, ran into a guardrail and, off the cliff. So again, that's all self-accompanied. I don't have any other musicians with me, and that's kind of my bag. Now, in the rhythm section, I'm not representing the drummer. There's nothing I could do to represent the drummer except really be explicit in the rhythm. Well, actually, it's not explicit. It's implicit, but strongly implied. The rhythm is there. The rhythmic feel is underneath. That's the point I'm trying to make. And so one misconception, or just an assumption that's not challenged by a lot of people, is if you don't have a drummer, you don't have a rhythm section. And I will point out that a piano, bass, guitar rhythm section, as opposed to piano, bass, drums, is totally viable. Nat King Cole did it. That was his rhythm section back before he, became this crooner that pretty much all he did was sing and occasionally play the piano. But back in the orange-colored sky days and all of that, he's there, straighten up and fly right, and no drummer typically. Oscar Peterson Trio, before Ed Thigpen and Ray Brown, before the drums came in with Herb Ellis, he had the piano, bass, guitar. And that particular rhythm section inspired one of the groups I play with, the Schobert Shires. It's kind of more of a project band right now. We don't do a lot of stuff, and it's contingent on the four of us being there, but we really enjoy playing together. And we do have a gig coming up in Chestertown, a show at the theater in Chestertown in March. But you can search for it and find references to it and find our Schobert Shires Facebook page. And what we did, we modeled it after the recording from 1959, I think, of the Oscar Peterson Trio with Stan Getz, no drummer, right? So we have myself on piano, Amy Shook on bass, the same Amy Shook that's involved in the trio part of our Blossom Dearie CD. Steve Abshire on guitar, perfect player, and Scott Silbert on saxophone. And we played last year the Chestertown Jazz Festival. And I have a note to myself. I'm going to try to remember before I upload this to share on my Facebook page a little video clip somebody posted from the festival last year of the closing chorus, the last melody chorus of One Note Samba. So it's not blowing, it's just the melody. But you would think something like One Note Samba, you think you'd have a drummer there. And you don't miss the drummer. And hopefully I'll post that video on my Facebook page so you can see it, so you can reference what I'm talking about. But you just assume there's a drummer. In fact, the festival director was a funny exchange. I had given him the personnel, so he could promote the band. And he called me up and said, "You forgot to tell me who your drummer is." I said, "No drummer." "Wait, no, there's a drummer. Someone's got to play drums." I said, No. I said, "Huh?" And so I think for a second he was wondering what kind of group he booked for his jazz festival event. It was actually not the main event. It was the kind of gala the night before. I said, "It's fine. It's cool." And then once he heard it, he's like, "You didn't need a drummer. I told you that." So the idea of the one-man rhythm section, obviously, I'm not the one-man band. I don't have, the hi-hat with my left foot and the bass drum with my right foot and, that kind of silly stuff. So a tight rhythm section doesn't require a drummer. And that's a whole nother subject. That could be another video. Because everyone needs to be connected to the groove, right? And if everyone's connected to the groove, you're not relying on somebody to create the groove, because it's within us, and we're just all holding hands in that same groove space, playing together in a rhythm section. That's what it should be. What happens, especially with, kids putting rock bands together and stuff, is that you do your part, whatever you do to play your instrument, and then a combination of that makes it groove, or makes it rock, or makes it whatever. And it's like you take the drummer away, especially with, like, inexperienced, kids coming up and playing, and it kind of falls apart. And it's like, it shouldn't fall apart. I don't know this for sure, but I had heard an account that Benny Goodman would rehearse his band. Of course, now we're talking swing, but the principle still applies. Benny Goodman would rehearse his band without the drummer, right? Without Gene Krupa or whoever the drummer was after him, because the thing had to swing on its own. It wasn't the drummer, it wasn't the drummer doing his thing that makes it feel the way it does. It feels the way it does because everybody who's taking part is agreeing on that feeling, right? And if all the players in the rhythm section are actually gremlins in my head, and I'm doing the one-man rhythm section, then, since they're all in my head, they're all agreeing on how it's feeling, which I never really thought about. That part about everybody getting on the same page, I was going to say it's a given, but then are all the gremlins in my head necessarily on the same page? And we're talking about what's inside my head, so always be frightened. So let me just play a little bit of a Joe Beam tune, a little different feel, and just now express the groove, the underlying pulse, the feel. You might want to tap your foot too, or sway to, or whatever. My gremlins are kind of in agreement. meditation. Losing my concentration a little bit, which is what can happen at the end of an hour, which can actually be a good thing. It's less of a good thing for speaking, but hopefully I've portrayed the idea of a one-man rhythm section, and if the rhythm is being portrayed or delivered such that you can feel that rhythm and you can tap your foot, let's say, then mission accomplished. Whether it's a group of guys or girls, men playing together, or whether it's one piano player doing his best to lay it down. So hopefully you can tap your foot to it as I'm walking, but it's not after midnight yet. So there we go. Hopefully you felt the pulse, you felt the groove, you tapped your foot to it, and that would demonstrate being a one-man rhythm section. So again, thanks to Scott Yano for the wonderful review, and what I'm going to do each week, every Wednesday night, now on this YouTube channel, my main YouTube channel, is to share experiences and things like this about music. And you don't have to necessarily be a musician, hopefully, to get something out of what I'm saying. Or if you are, hopefully I'm speaking to you too. And of course, I welcome your comments and feedback. And thank you for considering the support link. And thank you most of all for being here. So welcome to this new live stream, which I'm still going to call Inside the Process at times, but it is the view from the piano bench right here. And I also have some other content, some conversations with other musicians that I intend to have. And hopefully you'll find this interesting. So thanks again. See you tomorrow night for Piano for My Friends. That means you. Thanks.